If you listen to the show, you already know that we cannot exist without our sponsors. They are the ones who make things happen behind the scenes. So let's acknowledge Fuji Sports. We've been working with these guys for a while now, not only as far as this podcast is concerned, but also at the RŌL Academy. We've had their gear. I personally use their gis. What a phenomenal product.
Yeah, I mean, Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, MMA, tape, bags, anything you need for your Jiu-Jitsu journey, you can find at fujisports.com.
Let's talk RŌL TV. There's so much content on there. It's ridiculous at this point. But I think what is even more intriguing, as time went on during the project, we've been recording most of the events that were taking place here at RŌL Academy. At this point, I mean, we have guys like Chris Howder, Armand Fadi, Rafael Lovato Sr., and Pete the Greek. I mean, there are so many different events that we've kind of recorded it. Don't you think that's amazing? I mean, points of reflection and kind of going back for all the students to see what really happened and refresh their memory.
Yeah, I think it's great, you know, being able to go back and look at all these high-level practitioners, Octavio Cudo, like one of the names you didn't mention. And I mean, just these guys that have been doing this for so long come in, teach these amazing seminars and workshops, and it's all recorded and there for you to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get additional savings on all this, type in code RŌL Radio at the coupon and get additional 30% off of your membership.
Nice. Go to rolacademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. This ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content you have come to expect. Today's guest made a big impact on Jiu-Jitsu by incorporating kettlebells into Jiu-Jitsu training. Joey Alvarado joins us to discuss his journey creating Kettlejitsu, the wild days of early MMA in Mexico, the importance of lineage, finding your purpose, and more. Here is the RŌL Radio with third-degree BJJ black belt, the creator of Kettlejitsu, and instructor at Legacy Los Angeles, Joey the SoCal Sense Alvarado.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live.
All right, here we go.
Professor Joey, thanks for being here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I completely skipped Gary. Like I just jumped right into this. Listen, you are known for two things. You at least as I understand, you're known for kettlebells, which we'll talk about in a bit. Okay. But then you are known for this all inclusive jiu-jitsu approach about your body, your mind, and the jiu-jitsu itself. How did it all start? Where's the beginning of Professor Joey?
Oh my God, man! You want to go that far back?
Yeah.
Martial arts started because I grew up. My dad was in the military, and I grew up on a military on Fort Jackson in South Carolina, and I used to get bullied all the time. And we're from out here in LA, so my parents, they kind of grew up in like some gangs and stuff like that from out here. And then my father joined the military to kind of get us away from all that. And in South Carolina, for some reason, man, like I used to get bullied all the time, dude. And I was afraid to fight. So that frustrated my parents because they were used to fighting. You kind of had to fight out here in LA, you know. And then finally they just got fed up with it and like, you know what, you got to start doing something to defend yourself. So they stuck me into Taekwondo because that was the sport back then in the 80s. That was like the big sport. It was like Jiu-Jitsu is now, you know. And even more so because Taekwondo was going to become an Olympic sport. So it was becoming really big. So I started my martial arts journey back then. And you can even say I was kind of doing it before because I remember my friends and we used to watch Kung Fu Theater.
Oh, yeah.
And we're young, and you're young, you're flexible, and you're athletic, and we're out there doing handsprings and jumping around. So I picked up the Taekwondo really, really easy. I got good at it. I still And it just took me some time to mature to really get used to the fighting aspect, because in Taekwondo, you gotta take some kicks upside the head and stuff like that. It wasn't exactly the funnest thing for me at the time, but eventually I got over it, and I grew out of the fear of fighting and stuff like that. And then I continued it off and on because we moved to Belgium after that. We got stationed in Belgium, and I would kind of do Taekwondo seasonally because I played a little football, played a little baseball, excuse me. Then we moved to Germany, and then as soon as I got back to South Carolina, I started back Taekwondo with my master, Master Moreland. He's out of Atlanta, Georgia now, but he was in South Carolina back then. So he's my Taekwondo and Hapkido grandmaster. So look him up, Shelton R. Moreland in Atlanta. And I thought I was a pretty bad dude. I had been to some scraps before. And I got a job bouncing at a bar in South Carolina, which was in the little college area.
How old are you then?
Right now, I'm 52.
No. Back then, when you got the
Back then,
job
I was
as
like
bouncer.
early 20s, because like we moved back to the States when I was like 20 years old. And then it's probably around 22 when I started bouncing. And, I got lucky, and I Steven Seagal'd some people and escorted them out of the bar, so everybody thought I was a badass, like get them those little wrist locks, and they see this little guy escorting people out, and they were like, and then it kind of became like a thing. I remember the head bouncer would be like, hey, get Joey to escort that guy out, just so they could see me do something. Until one day it was real crazy, and there was this little short, stocky guy, man, that was just, he was on a bad one, and the head bouncer was like, Joey, you got to get this guy out of here. He's just trying to start fights everywhere, Somehow I wrestled the guy out the door, and he took me to the ground, man, outside on the concrete, and he mounted me. And I'd never been in that position in my entire life, man. I was like a fish out of water, and all I could think about is that this guy's about to pummel my face in. And right when he was about to punch me in the face, and I'll never forget it, because I just recently found this guy on Facebook, Scott Swindle. He was a bartender at that bar. He grabbed the guy's hand right before he smashed my face in. And I was like, oh my God. And then everybody was looking at me like, oh my God, Joey's about to get his ass kicked, and that, and I couldn't sleep. And I was like, man, I have like 2 black belts and a brown black belt, another Korean martial art. And I was like, and I could not handle this little freaking stocky, little short, drunk redneck. And it just blew my mind, man. I never had anybody take me to the ground like that. And so something in me, I just started researching martial arts. I started looking through. Back then, we didn't have YouTube. All we had was like Black Belt magazine. There's a couple other like Black Belt magazine, like Kung Fu magazine and stuff like that. And I was just like looking through there, and I saw this ad that said fight like a Navy SEAL. And I was like, if it's good enough for the Navy SEALs, it should be pretty good. These guys are badasses, So I ordered the VHS tapes. I don't know if your listeners know what that is.
We do.
VHS tape. Like this big, And I learned, and that's the first time I saw jiu-jitsu. I never seen jiu-jitsu before. I was like, what the hell? Take somebody to the ground. I thought that was the craziest thing, and I never. And so, the videos were from a guy named Frank Cucci. He has a gym in Virginia Beach. He was on SEAL Team 6, and he developed a hand-to-hand combat course for the SEALs. And he's the one who did those VHS tapes. So what he was teaching on those VHS tapes was a combination of Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, and a little bit of Filipino martial arts, because in the SEALs they have to carry a knife and stuff like that. And I never seen anybody kick somebody in the leg either. I just thought that was the craziest thing in the world. I was like, what? Because in Taekwondo, all the kicks are directed a lot to the head, to the body, definitely not to the legs. So then I learned those techniques. I remember I ordered some Muay Thai pads online. Online back then. And it just so happened that Frank, being in Virginia Beach, my girlfriend lived in the same place. And I was like, oh my God. And he was a blue belt under Pedro Sauer at that time. And at that time, there weren't really any American black belts. It was around like 94 or something like that. So if you had a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, I mean, you were the shit. That was just like unheard of,
Oh,
but
yeah.
he used to fly Pedro Sauer out every month to teach at his academy, and he would promote Frank and his students and stuff like that. So I would go get private lessons from Frank. He introduced me to Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, Filipino martial arts, and the Bruce Lee arts, like Jeet Kune Do, Jun Fan, Kung Fu, and stuff like that. So that was my introduction to Jiu-Jitsu and those, which later became MMA, right? And
Yeah.
I would go back to South Carolina, get a couple of my Taekwondo buddies, and we'd roll on carpet. We'd roll anywhere we could wrestle, you know. And I would just teach them like the two techniques that I knew, and then we would just wrestle and just freestyle it, man. And then that's when, the UFC started getting bigger. You know, all these other martial arts started coming out. I even competed in like the first grappling tournament in South Carolina. And then after that, one of my training partners that I basically was teaching what I know, he won the second grappling tournament. I have a friend, Mark Mills. He has a Columbia Martial Arts Academy in South Carolina. He had an academy way back then, and he's the one who hosted it. And he invited people from Georgia, North Carolina, and then it was a trip because it was like all these different styles of grappling. So a judo guy with a gi. There was me. I had this one Brazilian gi that I took like 3 months to get here from Brazil. It was, you know what it was? It was a Krugen's kimono. So you remember those Krugen's kimonos?
Oh,
when
yeah.
they first came out, they had patches on it, and they were like kind of fitted, and everybody was like, "Whoa, what the hell is that?" So yeah, and then eventually I moved out here, and I continued my training under. As soon as I got on my feet in LA, I continued my training under Hajar Machado. Higan Machado actually gave me my blue belt in Pasadena, and then Hajar took over that academy. So I continued my jiu-jitsu journey with Hajar.
Hold on. Before you continue here, let's talk about the one day with the bouncing when the little guy got on top of you. Because I think that's pivotal.
I'll never forget. I remember what this guy looks like too, man. He was like a little short, stocky guy. He had like long blonde hair.
Before that event, did you think that you can fight?
Yeah, because I was Steven Seagal and people in the bar and stuff like that, and I had been a few scraps on the street too, so I was pretty confident. I did think I could fight.
What goes through your mind when you are on the ground, he's on top of you, he's about to hit you?
Man, it's being mounted on concrete. It's scary as freaking hell, man. That's scary, dude, because like you got concrete. I mean, it's one thing being mounted on a soft tatami in jiu-jitsu, it sucks. But especially if you've never been in that situation before, I've never had anybody on top of me like that. It was very scary, man. And all I could think about was this guy's going to pummel my head into the ground and my head is going to bash against the concrete, It was scary. It was, you feel helpless. And it's not a good feeling at all, man. It's not a good feeling.
Obviously, that didn't happen. You come out of this fine. But then you go home and you start thinking about this. What's going through your mind? Because we going through these extremes, right? From one day, literally that morning, you're thinking like, I can handle this. I can fight. I'm protecting people. I'm a bouncer. And then literally things flip like the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Right. What's going through your mind that night?
Well, it's very it's a huge hit to your ego, that's for sure. It's very demoralizing, and it just I was thinking, I was like, man, I've been training in martial arts since I was like 9 years old, and I could not beat this little redneck man in a bar, and it was it sucked the feeling, and it just I felt kind of like what have I been doing all this time if I couldn't, what have I been doing? I've been training and I can't fight. And I was like, I couldn't be, it was horrible. It was crazy. It was a life-changing experience, that's for sure.
So then you start training jiu-jitsu. You start getting introduced in some shape or forms here. You talk about different situations with the mixed environments. At which point do you process the information that jiu-jitsu is the way to go?
The first time I went and trained with Frank, and just the way I was like, I mean, at that point I had 20 years of martial arts, and Frank was just playing with me and submitting me, and then he was like, hey, go roll with this one of his white belts, and they were taking my back and choking me, and I was just like, man, this martial art is crazy. I was like, how these guys are white belts in jiu-jitsu, and I have I have a black belt in taekwondo, black belt in hapkido, a brown black belt in kuksul, and these guys are white belts in jiu-jitsu. And they probably like, and they were all just taking turns choking me out and stuff like that. And it just blew my mind. It was at the same time, it was humbling, but at the same time, it was amazing. I was like, I never knew a martial art could be so incredible to where you don't have to use, athleticism to beat an opponent. You just use leverage and technique, man. It just blew my mind. I never was aware of grappling martial arts or anything like that. I never even heard it because, whenever you're training a specific martial art, of course you're being indoctrinated to think that that's the best martial art, right? And then I found out, I was like, wow, it really isn't. I was like, jiu-jitsu is a whole nother ball game, man, a whole nother ball game. And it was really a huge wake up call, and it was extremely exciting at the same time because I just became like utterly obsessed with jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and stuff like that, man. And every chance I got to train Muay Thai, I would travel to North Carolina, to Virginia Beach, to Georgia. And eventually, Jacques, the president of the Alliance, and his real name is Homero Calvacanch. He opened a dojo in Atlanta, and like a few months before I came out here, I got a chance to train with him too. And I rolled with a 5th degree black belt under Holmes Gracie, and it was just unbelievable, man. And Jacques was just such a nice guy, and he was so. I had a chance to do some private lessons with him. And he was so cool, man. He had like a really big academy back then. And actually back then it was called Master Jiu-Jitsu. And I don't know what I did with my shirt, man, but that was like my favorite shirt. It was like a crocodile with a gi on. It was my favorite shirt. But yeah, so like, it was amazing, man. It was like, I felt truly in love with jiu-jitsu.
Would you agree that at that point, the life is changing, your life is changing, where you have this new epiphany of how powerful jiu-jitsu is, and you start?
It definitely did, because I was already pretty passionate about taekwondo and hapkido and stuff like that, and then something inside me, man, I was like, I knew I had to pursue this jiu-jitsu stuff. And the UFC had came out, and I was like, wow, this whole new evolution of martial arts came out, and I just knew like I just had to keep training it. Like I had friends that would be like, why are you always doing you spend all your money on martial arts? You're always traveling here and driving there. Or like, what are you gonna do with it? I was like, man, I don't know. I just know I love it, and I can't get enough of it. And I don't know. I'm gonna do something with it someday. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. I just know I have to learn this stuff because it's. I just had to follow my heart at that point. I fell in love with jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai.
So you travel a lot. You have a lot of interaction and visibility to different instructors, different opportunities to learn from.
I haven't traveled in a while. I haven't really traveled since the pandemic, but before that I was traveling.
No, but I'm talking about back then. I'm talking about back then. Back then, right? You visit different places. You learn from different people, right?
Definitely.
Do you have a memorable experience, the one that stands out the most? The one private lesson, the one, I don't know, a teaching technique, or something that really stuck with you even to this point?
Yeah, definitely that first lesson with Frank Cucci. The first time I did a private lesson with him, and we did some Filipino martial arts with the sticks, and then we did some Muay Thai, and yeah, I remember it very well because he was holding Thai pads for me, and then I was kicking the Thai pads. He was like, I thought you said you never did Muay Thai before. I was like, man, I learned these from your VHS tapes. He's like, you learned this from my VHS tapes? And I was like, yeah, man. I was like, I told you I have a Taekwondo background, so the Muay Thai kicks are actually easier, And then that lesson, and then when he flew Pedro Sauer out, me and my friend Mark that I was telling you about that has that gym in I just talked to him about that. He goes, remember we did that private lesson with Pedro Sauer? It was like a semi-private. It was like a little, like a group private. And Pedro Sauer came in with this like little gi. And he was just like, he was so cool, man. He rolled with us. And he was tapping Frank, you know, and you know what I mean? And I was like, damn, he's just like playing with Frank Cucci. And Frank Cucci was playing with me. It was pretty mind-blowing, man. It was pretty mind-blowing. And Pedro, man, I just remember him being such a nice guy. And that's also when I knew I loved Brazilian accents. Those Brazilian accents are the best, man. I don't know if you've been to our academy a few times, Professor. Like we all walk around trying to like mimic Brazilian accents all the time over there, man. That's funny. And you know, we're all getting pretty good at it because Alberto always has all his different Brazilian friends over there and stuff like that. So we're like, check out this guy's accent. And he's like, instead of saying fight, they say fight. They go, oh, you're a fight on the street and stuff like that. But yeah, I remember Pedro. He was so cool, man. And he doesn't look like, if you look at Pedro's side, he doesn't look like a guy that can just smash you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think he was like a stockbroker or something like that, or in the banking when he was in Brazil, until he was like. But he just looked like just like a normal guy on the street, like cool, you know, and it was just unbelievable how good he was, and how I'll never forget that one private lesson with him for sure. And then you could also say the first private lesson I did with Jacarea too. He like tapped me in like 2 seconds and he was correcting me on everything. I'll never forget it, man. He kept saying, I remember he kept slapping the mat and say posture. But yeah, so many different ways.
But that's the beautiful part about Jiu-Jitsu, right? That somebody who does not appear to be strong or powerful, they can really manipulate the situation.
Exactly, man. Like you know, nowadays you really don't know who you're messing with, man. Because it seems like everybody's training in something, or everybody watches UFC and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the you know, the old saying goes is you can't judge a book by its cover, you know, and the most this person could be small or something like that, but like have some good jits and just destroy you. It's amazing.
So at which point you discover kettlebells? At which point this fitness component of you starts?
It was when I opened a gym because I had a MMA career as well.
Mm-hmm.
I won a belt in Mexico, and I used to teach out of a little boxing gym in Alhambra. And then I had a friend of mine. He was like, "Hey, man, you have a belt. You won the Mexican title. Like, maybe it's a good time to open a gym." So I was like, "Cool, man." I was like, "Definitely, that's where I was going to be heading down eventually, anyway." So we opened a gym. It was called SoCal MMA, and I was teaching all the classes, and then we're doing some female kickboxing classes, and I had my own repertoire of like warm-ups from Taekwondo, from Jiu-Jitsu. I was incorporating like the animal movements and stuff like that. But then after a while, like you know, you're like, wow, you know, I need to learn more. That way, students don't get bored. You know, you have to be able to. I remember one time we were doing all these workouts, and one of my students, Letty, she turned to me. She was like, "Can we do something different?" So we did that last week, and I was like, "Oh my God, I really got to like buckle down on this fitness thing." And my business partner at the time, Bill, he was like, "Why don't we get a kettlebell coach?" And I was like, "You know what? I heard really good things about kettlebells, and I heard they're really functional." I was like, "But I have no idea what to do with them." So I was like, "Yeah, I'd like to learn that." You know, I was open to it. So I was smart enough to know that I needed an instructor to learn that stuff because I didn't know anybody who did kettlebells. I know what they look like, and I heard and learned about them and read articles about them and stuff like that, and talking about how functional it was for martial arts and stuff. And so we got a certified instructor. It turns out I knew the guy. He was a Machado blue belt. And at first he taught us some basic stuff, you know. And I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." He taught us a Turkish get-up. And after a while, it just seemed like we're doing the same thing over and over. And I was like, "You know what, man? Like, I was like, these kettlebells are really good, but I felt like we're only getting the workout from here down, you know, like a lower body workout." I was like, "Why don't we do more presses? Why don't we do more rows?" And he was teaching a class at my gym once a week. And eventually people started getting bored of that class too. And I was like, "You know what, man? I think I could teach a better class than this guy." So I started incorporating more of a full body workout. And at that time, I was living in the back of my gym. And it's definitely not something I recommend. I lived in a little room in the back of my gym. Everybody thought it was cool. I was like, "Man, it really is not cool." Like, it really is not cool. But I was sitting in the back of the gym, and then I just had like this epiphany, and I was like, I bet you can do like a hip escape with a kettlebell. And then all I had to do was open my door, and I was on the mat right there, right? So I got a kettlebell, and I started doing hip escape. I was like, man, this is pretty cool, man. I could do a hip escape. Then I started doing like rocking chairs with it. And I was like, I bet you could throw punches with kettlebells. And then next thing you know, I was just like experimenting. And then I basically used my students as guinea pigs, and I started incorporating some of that stuff. And then my students started to ask for it. They're like, hey, can we do some more of that Kettlejitsu stuff? I was like, man, they dig it. Like, this is pretty cool. So that's how it all started right there. And then I was looking for people to connect with, and I was looking, and the YouTube back then was pretty new. So I was looking up kettlebells. I was like, man, everybody's just doing the same thing: snatch, 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 snatch. And to me, I didn't feel like that was like an exercise that they should be emphasizing so much, And I was like, man, doesn't anybody do anything different with kettlebells? And it was like, no, nobody was really doing anything really different. Do you know who Steve Cotter is?
Mm-hmm. I know who he is, yeah.
Steve, I think he had a martial arts background in Kung Fu. And he was doing some different stuff. And I was like, okay, now this guy is doing something different. He's going outside of the box. I kind of dig this guy, I was like, I like that. I was like, you see, you can kind of experiment with them, And I was looking for people to connect with, and I came across this website called It's called My Mad Methods. And these guys were thinking outside of the box, not like me, but they were still like doing different things, like sit-ups, and they were tossing the kettlebell back and forth, different things. I was like, these guys are pretty cool, man. And they were selling kettlebells out of their facility in Brea. So I went out there to buy some kettlebells, and with the idea that I wanted to connect with them and maybe show them some of the stuff that I was developing. So I got there, his name was Mark DeGrasse, and I bought the kettlebells, and I was like, hey man, I've been developing this style of kettlebell training. I was like, do you think I could show you? And he was open. He was like, yeah. So I started doing some kettlebell flows in front of him, and he was like, hold on a second. He's like, is it okay if I film this? And I was like, yeah. And I started doing some flows, and he was filming it. He was like, man, he put his camera out. He's like, we have to do a DVD. He's like, this makes sense. He's like, this is the evolution of kettlebell training right here. He's like, yeah. He's like, martial arts, and then he's like, there's a connection. I was like, really? You want to do a DVD with me? I was like, that's pretty cool. So we did a DVD.
That had to feel good.
That's great, man, because like I knew my students liked it, and I knew I enjoyed doing it. But to get some approval from somebody who has been doing kettlebells longer than me it just kind of justified what I was doing. It was like I was like, you see, he sees it too. He sees the evolution, And it led to me doing a couple DVDs with him. I did a kettlebell DVD, a bodyweight DVD, and then his company got bought out by On It, Joe Rogan's company.
Mm-hmm.
And then he hit me up one day. He goes, hey, man, Joe Rogan's company On It just bought out my whole company. He's like, so they're going to be selling your DVDs on his website now. And I was like, wow. Well, he was like, what's going to happen is, he's like, I'm going to start the On It Academy over there, Fitness Academy. Once I get that running, I'm going to bring you in as the kettlebell guy. I was like, okay, cool. And that didn't pan out for whatever reason. He went with a different guy for the kettlebell guy. But at the same time, they kind of took my concept and blew it up, So a lot of people think that the whole kettlebell flow and the movement thing came from the On It Academy and stuff like that, when in reality, I was the one who started that. But you know what they say is, like, you never want to invent anything, because eventually somebody's going to get it and they're going to make it more famous than you.
There's a lot of truth in that.
But listen, if you think of all the inventions over the years, since, like people, invent something and you think that was the person that invented it, and in actuality it was somebody else, So it's all good, man, because I have articles on it, and Joe Rogan's talked about me with on his podcast before, and he's giving me some good props and stuff like that too. So it's all good. I still get people following me from just that one episode where he talked about me and my kettlebell flows and stuff like that.
So when you look at your entire life, I feel like you do everything that you do is to better your students. You everything, at least what I'm hearing at this moment, is that everything is to create this evolution, to improve things. And
Yes,
have you ever
definitely.
reflected? Have you ever reflected on the amount, on the impact that you personally have made on everybody else? I mean, we are talking
Um,
probably hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people.
well, I don't really think about that. I mean, I teach jujitsu every day, and I see it the way it changes people, and how I love to see when somebody comes in as a white belt and then they work their way up to learning jujitsu to where they're like submitting people and they're getting really good and placing in tournaments like that. But I guess I just never sit around dwelling on it. But it does it. I'm reminded of it sometimes when somebody from a different country goes, "Hey, I follow your workouts and stuff like that." I'm like, that's pretty cool, man. I got some guy like in Portugal doing my kettlebell flows and working out to my programs and stuff like that. So, because of the kettlebell stuff, it has um, impacted people all over the world for sure. Like in Italy, Italy was like the first country to embrace Kettlejitsu. And shortly after I released the DVD, I had a friend Flavius that flew me out there for 14 days to teach at a gigantic fitness festival out there. That was amazing. So like, man, I mean, now that you bring it up, I'm thinking about it. but, but yeah, so it's allowed me to travel to different places, Costa Rica, Germany, and all over America and stuff like that. So it's cool, man. Knowing that I've had impact on kettlebell training and I had an impact on its evolution and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
Do you feel like that's part of your legacy in a sense of that you're leaving a footprint behind,
I think
as we
so.
go through this journey?
I think so. I think so. Like later on, maybe 20 years from now, people will be doing some kettlebell flows and because that's what we do. We kind of like, when it comes to music, I'm a musician too, right? I like Led Zeppelin,
Mhm.
but then I wanted to know what they listened to, and they were listening to like blues and stuff like that. So you go back and you look. So like maybe they'll go back and research and go, oh, this guy Joey Alvarado is the one who first started doing kettlebells, and maybe I should check out his stuff too because the whole kettlebell thing is taking a whole different how can I say it's running an entirely different direction than I anticipated because what's happened is social media has influenced kettlebells now. So now it's a competition to see who can make the most complicated kettlebell flows. And now people are juggling and flipping them around and stuff like that. And that's cool. That's the cool thing about kettlebells is you can do whatever you want with it, But my priority is functional training for everyday life and for martial arts, right? So I feel like back in the day when I first developed the kettlebell flows, I was like a black sheep, and people were like, "Oh, you're not supposed to do that with kettlebells." Like you're gonna hurt people, you're gonna hurt yourself, you're gonna hurt this and this that. And now I feel like I'm on the conservative side of everything because people are doing these crazy, complicated kettlebell flows just to get likes, and you even have like guys who are obviously bodybuilders, but they do the kettlebell stuff just to get some attention on Instagram. So it's evolved into a whole different thing that I never really anticipated. But yeah, so that's where we are, man. I love it, teach it, I do it myself.
For those who are listening right now and they are not familiar with that blend of jiu-jitsu and kettlebells, and this is what you're all about, this is what your system is all about, how would you describe this? Why is this so beneficial to jiu-jitsu players?
There's a bunch of different reasons. See, like by saying it's just kettlebells, it's a little bit misleading because it's kettlebell and body weight. What I realized is, especially teaching so much, is that we need to warm up our bodies, man. You have to warm up your bodies before we get into this jujitsu stuff. And and same thing with kettlebell is, I remember when I first started learning the kettlebell stuff, I was like, my back was hurt, of like just throbbing after every class, and I was like, what's going on? I was like, this guy doesn't even really warm up, So and that when you don't warm up properly, that leads to injury.
Mhm.
So then I started incorporating more of the body weight stuff, more of the mobility, and stuff like that. So Kettlejitsu, what I do is really kettlebell and bodyweight training. So we do mobility, we do bodyweight training, and I remember a friend of mine had a book back in the day called "Your Body Is Your Gym," and that's what. And I realized, like, man, you could do so much with just your body alone. You know, something as simple as burpees and stuff like that. But you know, over the years, I realized that in jiu-jitsu and in everyday life, we're really only utilizing a few different movements. We're squatting, we're pressing, we're pushing, we're pulling, we're hinging, and we're lunging. So that is like the core of my workouts. We're always working those movements to strengthen our foundations for jiu-jitsu. For instance, like, I'll teach different ways to open the legs from a closed guard, right? You know the method where you have to stand up to open the legs, right? You grab the sleeve and you step up one leg at a time. You'll be surprised how many people cannot step up one leg at a time.
Oh,
essentially
yeah.
What that is you're doing a lunge on one leg. So why not do more lunges, body weight, and do it with resistance, right? Like with a kettlebell, however you want to do it. So if you're strengthening those movements, you know, then you're going to feel stronger in those positions whenever you're doing jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Something as simple as that. And you don't realize how much we hinge. I mean, we're pushing each other, we're pulling each other, we're doing an arm drag. That's a pull, right? So why not strengthen those movements by working those movements, you know? And then we do some twisting and stuff like that. We do some rotational stuff. But that's really the core of what I do. And so if you're strengthening those foundational movements, then I think it's going to make you stronger for jiu-jitsu as well.
And I think also jiu-jitsu has developed this stigma in the sense that it's very flowy, you don't need to be strong. It is for, you know, weaker people. And at the same time, I think it's often being ignored that physical component, you know, these physicalities do exist, and we do need to get stronger. We do need to move. Like, this is why, you know, people get hurt because they don't warm up or they're not challenging themselves from a physical perspective.
It's a different type of strength, though, right?
Absolutely, man.
It's not how much weight you can lift. It's completely different.
Functional.
Yeah.
It's exactly. Like jiu-jitsu, I tell people all the time, jiu-jitsu builds a functional strength that you just cannot get from anything else. You know, it's amazing. But go ahead.
So you're going through these years of training, right? You go through the ranks of jiu-jitsu. You're in California at that point of time. At which point your black belt arises? How is this journey unfolds to the rank of black belt? Because at that point, this would be another black belt that you had, right? I mean, you have multiple ones with other arts, right?
Yes. So what happened was I fought professionally for 7 years. And I think I was a purple belt and then that's when I told my master Hajar, I was like, Master, you know what, like, I got to start doing this MMA thing, you know. I was like, I don't want, you know, like, I'm going to start teaching out of this gym in Alhambra. And, you know, I don't want you to think I'm like leaving your academy to go train with another jiu-jitsu guy. It's like, but now my focus is going to be MMA. And my master Hajar was like, he was like, you have my blessing, Joey. You've probably been a great student. And he's like, I don't know MMA. He's like, but any way I can help you, you know, I will. And so during that 7 years, I wasn't really eligible for promotion because, you know, you're not training with Guy. And I fought for 7 years, and I had this friend, Joe Camacho, may he rest in peace. He's kind of the guy that helped me get into martial arts. He was already a black belt. And he was like, he's like, Jerry, I know you're a purple belt. I know you're Master's Hajar. He's like, but I can't have you smashing all these people on the mat and you be just a purple belt. He goes, can I give you your brown belt? And I was like, yeah, of course, sure, man, you know. So then he gave me my brown belt. And after I finished my fighting career, I went right back to my master Hajar. And I was like, I gotta finish my training with my master because I love Hajar. You know, I'm an extremely loyal person. You know, once I found Hajar, I was like, okay, I don't need to train with anybody else. This guy grew up in the same household. as the Gracies. His master was Hull's Gracie. I was like, I'm good to go. I was like, there's nothing that anybody else could possibly know that he doesn't know already. You know, he saw the whole evolution. And I love him. He's such a great guy. He's like a vegetarian. He doesn't cuss. He's like the polar opposite of his brother Hegan. But he gets a character. I love it. He gets funny, man. But he's amazing too. So then I went back to Hodger, and then I just went like kind of I went on a competition spree with jiu-jitsu, and I did like 20 tournaments in 2 years. And 2 years, all I did was like travel, compete. I was competing twice a month. And at that time, I was like, I think it was a master 2, master 3. And IBJJF, I was ranked number 1 at that time because I was just competing so much. I was winning all the tournaments, but I was placing in almost every tournament. So, and then Hodger, that's when Hodger was like, all right, man. He's like, you know, we're gonna have a black belt ceremony. I'm gonna give you your black belt, you know. So we had a ceremony and everything, and that was my path to black belt after that, you know. I always knew no matter what that I had to go back and get my black belt from Hodger. You know, it wouldn't have been the same if I tried to do it with anybody else.
So when that conversation unfolds with him, hey, listen, we're gonna have black belt ceremony. You're gonna get yours. What's going through your mind?
It was just like, wow, man, I cannot believe it. I'm gonna actually be a jiu-jitsu black belt. It was like, you know, like one of the things that was so intriguing back in the day when jiu-jitsu first came out, it was like it takes 10 years to get a black belt, no exceptions. There was like, you know what I mean? I was like, wow. I was like, I could get a taekwondo black belt in like 3 years. You know, I could get a karate black belt in 3 years. I was like, 10 years. I was like, man, that's a hell of a commitment, dude. And it just seems so unobtainable because there weren't that many jiu-jitsu instructors back then, you know? And to be able to have a black belt from my master, it just meant so much to me, man. It meant so much to me. And you know, I was like, you know, I still am a jiu-jitsu nerd, and it to me it's very special because, you know, if you listeners out there don't know, the Machados are cousins of the Gracies, and they grew up in the same household and everything. And I'd be like, hey, what was it like to roll with Holes? Hey, what was it like to roll with Rickson? I was like, hey, you got any stories? Like, he would just tell me all kinds of stories, and I was just like a little kid, like a little geeky kid. And I was like, man, that's one hell of a lineage right there, man. You know? I was like, I traced my black belt from Hodger, and he got his black belt from Master Carlos. But before that, he trained with Master Holes. You know, I was like, it just made me feel so proud, and it was a huge milestone in my martial arts career, for sure.
What was the most memorable story that you heard from him?
Just the fact that he said Holes Gracie used to play with everybody. He said he used to play with Rickson. He used to play with everybody. But also, another thing he told me, he said Rickson, like after Holes died and everything, Rickson was like on another level, right? They said they would train really hard, and then Rickson would roll himself up in a carpet and just kind of meditate in a carpet like that. And I was just like,
really? What? I've never heard that before.
I never heard that. He told us that once before. Yeah.
You've heard that before?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, and I was just like, what the fuck? Could you imagine rolling yourself in a carpet and just trying to keep? That I was like, wow. I would freak out. I'd be like, get me out of here. Somebody, you know. Yeah. So like, I guess Rickson was always trying to push those boundaries, you know.
So
another thing. I asked him. I said, what was something that made Holes, like, I forgot what I asked him, like special or something like that. It was like Holes was the first person to go train in different martial arts and stuff like that and bring it back to jiu-jitsu. Yeah. He said he was real open like that. Wasn't he training like in wrestling or something like that? Or no, I think he was doing sambo and all kinds of other stuff like that too. And wrestling.
I've read that before too. Yeah, I've read that before too. That he was the first one who was open-minded enough to really venture out.
He was really like innovative, and he was like had that open mind, and he was like always training in different things to make the jiu-jitsu stronger. Yeah, so that's another thing.
Have you ever reflected on the meaning of the black belts that you earned? In a sense of, you have few of them. They all have different value, right? From different skill sets, different masters, and so on. Have you ever thought about it, the difference between them and how they play a role in your life?
Definitely, the Taekwondo black belt, like even though back then the Taekwondo was becoming an Olympic sport, it was getting kind of watered down. I remember we started going in that direction where it was more of an Olympic style, and then my master went back to what's called ITF style, which is more traditional self-defense oriented. And I'm so happy that he did, because um, he made us fight for our black belts. We had to fight multiple opponents and stuff like that. And you had to do this whole thing where you fight one person, and then another person would come in, and you have to fight, and then next thing you know, you're fighting three people. And I think that really definitely took me to another level for sure. And then after that, like, let me see, Hapkido, he was my Hapkido master too. I really liked Hapkido because I never seen all these like different joint manipulations and stuff like that. And there's actually a lot of similarity from Hapkido to Jiu-Jitsu, because Hapkido is like, I mean, it all came from Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, right? It all came from Aiki Jiu-Jitsu, and Aiki Jiu-Jitsu turned into Judo, it turned into Aikido. What happens is, in martial arts, like with Aiki Jiu-Jitsu was the original martial art of samurais. And people who trained in those martial arts took specific aspects of that martial art and turned it, like Jigoro Kano. He was like, I'm going to take these throws from Aiki Jiu-Jitsu and create Judo. And then you had Morihei Ueshiba. He was like, I'm going to take the soft aspects of that and create Aikido. You know, so there's a lot of similarities with Hapkido. There's actually some throws and some self-defense moves that are exact identical to Hapkido, you know? So like becoming proficient in that, I feel it really helped me get better at jiu-jitsu quicker, because I already understand how joint manipulations work, like arm bars and wrist locks and stuff like that, you know? So I kind of feel it's like, you know, if you learn one language, if you're bilingual, then it helps you learn other languages a lot easier. Just like Alberto, you know, he could speak like 3 different languages, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. You learn one martial art, and then it kind of helps you pick up this other martial art a lot easier, because it's teaching you so much about your body and how to use your body in different ways that you're not normally accustomed to doing and stuff like that. So I kind of feel having black belts in those other martial arts helped me pick up other martial arts a lot easier. So they all had different value.
You've been on the mat or training martial arts for more than 30 years? 40?
40.
How long?
40 since I was
all of
9.
them? Yeah.
40.
Have you ever thought about, like, have you ever, back then, way back then, have you thought about that you will be doing this for a living? Have you, like, has that ever crossed your mind that this is going to be your profession?
At some point, I knew, I was like, I'm going to have to teach. Like, people would ask me, like, what are you going to do for it? Or what are you going to do with all this martial arts that you're doing? And I was like, you know, eventually I was like, I'm going to have to teach it, obviously. And I knew, like, with MMA, I turned pro when I was like, there was no amateur MMA back then. It was like, you just turned pro, man. You know, you knew somebody that had a connection, and they get you a fight, and that's just basically how it was. And I was smart enough to know, like, I was like, okay, I'm 30. I think I was 32 or 33. I was like, that's really late for somebody to start a fighting career. I was like, but I have to experience this, because I know I wanted to teach this for a living, because I just loved MMA so much. I was like, this MMA thing, I was like, this is the real deal. This is it right here. This is what we've all been wondering for years and years and years. That question, what's the best martial art? I was like, now we know. It's a combination of boxing, kickboxing, and jiu-jitsu, right? Or wrestling. And I was like, I have to get this experience in the cage. That way, it'll make me a better instructor, so I can teach people, and they can learn from my mistakes in the cage, stuff like that, you know, because I never had back then in LA, there weren't any MMA gyms. There might have been a select few sprinkled out, like in Orange County, but there were no MMA gyms. So I was kind of like self-trained, you know. But like when I caught the MMA bug, that's when I was like, okay, I want to fight so I could open up my own gym and train fighters.
What was your first fight like?
First fight? It's funny. My first fight was it was in a show called Crown Fighting Championship. It was the first show. It was in Rosarito, Mexico. Are you familiar with Rosarito?
No.
Okay, so Rosarito is like in Baja, Mexico. It's like close to TJ. It's by the beach, but Rosarito is it's like a party place where people from California can go and drink when they're 18. So on spring break, it was just like, it was crazy. It was just like it was like crazy people partying, different clubs and stuff like that. So the fight was on it was the Crown Fighting Championship. It was the Corona Plaza Hotels. The guy owns like a bunch of hotels called Corona Plaza. Corona means crown in Spanish. So it was outside of the Corona Plaza Hotel on Rosarito Beach in a ring. Okay, and I'll never forget. I mean, it was pretty wild, man, when I think about it. Everybody was in one room, even my opponent, and we're all just going around, what's going on? It was really unorganized, and we could hear the crowd outside, like, yelling and stuff like that. And then the promoter, his name was Tony Perez, came in and he goes, Joey, you want to be the first fight? He didn't even have like a fight order or anything like that. You know, he came out, he was like, Joey, you want to be the first fight? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, let's go. I was like, dude, my hands aren't wrapped. I haven't warmed up. He's like, well, hurry up and do it because they want to see a fight right now. So I wrap my hands, boom, 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 boom. We run out there. I get in the ring, and the referee was Larry Landis. I don't know if you know who that is. Larry Landis was the old UFC ref. And Larry came up to me and he goes, you have your mouthpiece? And I was like, shit. And I turned to my corner and I was like, go get the mouthpiece. And then he goes, he has me. I remember I was like in the corner of the ring and he put his hand, and Larry's a big ass guy. He looked at me, he goes, Joey, you don't have time for your fucking mouthpiece, man. He's like, these people are going to fucking rush this ring any second. He's like, take care of this guy quick and just be done with it. And I was like, shit. I was like, all right. And luckily, you know, I got a chomp. I did like an inside kick, right hand, took his back, took him to the ground, and I rolled him into an armbar. And when I rolled him into an armbar, he grabbed his hand, and I felt bad. I felt bad afterwards. Like, he grabbed his hand, so I hammer fist him in the face, and then caught him in an armbar. And then everybody started booing, and there was only like beer and sand in the ring and everything. And they raised my hand, right? And then here comes my corner man with the mouthpiece running over here like this with the mouthpiece like that. And I just like, and he was like, and I was like, dude, I'm sorry. He's like, what happened? He's like, I won. He's like, what? And I felt bad because he had helped me so much, but he had so I fought my first fight without a mouthpiece. Pretty wild.
What a crazy story. Wow.
Really crazy because, you know, like, because back then, I mean, I look back and I go, man, that's kind of crazy because those shows didn't have insurance or anything like that. So if somebody got hurt, you're assed out, man. In TJ, they'll just throw you in the alley and give you a couple tacos and a Corona or something like that, you know? I'm like so happy that I never really got hurt or anything like that. So it's pretty wild. It was really like the Stone Ages of MMA, really.
It was the Fight Club.
Yeah, man, really. It was pretty wild. See, back then, when you told, and it wasn't even called MMA yet. So if you told people you're going to do that cage fighting, they would just look at you like you're crazy. Like, oh, all right, well, good luck with that, man. You know, and nowadays they're like, oh, that's dope. You know, that's MMA. You're an MMA fighter, cool. But back then, people would just look at you like you're crazy, man. It's changed so much.
What? Yeah. Oh, that evolution in the last 30 years is remarkable. It's crazy how things have changed.
Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. Yeah. Now they have, like in California, they have an athletic commission for the amateurs and stuff like that too. Everything's super organized. You know, there's insurance and stuff like that. They take care of the fighters really well. It's very professional. It's really cool to see the whole evolution come full circle like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
At which point you meet Alberto?
That's a good question. I know. I had my own gym, and I was already doing the kettlebell stuff like that. And a guy that I was actually supposed to fight at one point, but the show didn't work out. This guy Jared Papazian. he messaged me on Instagram and he goes, "Hey man," he goes, I'm about to defend my King of the Cage belt. And he goes, and he goes, "I think that Kettlejitsu stuff will really help me." He goes, "I'm really uncoordinated." And he goes, "Do you think you would help me train for this fight?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, hell yeah." So I started training with him, and that was Alberto's fighter, Jared Papazian. So I met him briefly like that, and then I think I trained Jared for his King of the Cage belt defense and his first UFC fight. Yeah, because he had 2 UFC fights. And then he invited me. He goes, "Hey, why don't you come train with us over here in Burbank?" And it was perfect because I was like a brown belt at the time, and that's when I started competing a lot. And I was mostly training with my students, so I was better than them, right? So I could go train with Alberto because he had like brown belts and stuff like that. People my level are like even better. I was like, I could come train with him. So I was training back then I was training like 3 or 4 times a day when I was competing a lot. And Alberto's gym was another place where I would be able to go get a lot of rolls in, which was really cool, man. Because he had that a nice facility and he had a lot of students. So that's how I met Alberto. And yeah, that's how I met Alberto.
What a small world, like overall, when we step back and kind of look at this, right?
I knew who Alberto was because back then, American black belts weren't too common, and then you would read about these different people, these different Americans that would go to Brazil and train. I'd just be like, I was like, how the hell do people just like pick up and leave and move to Brazil and live there? I'm like, what the fuck is that? Yeah, that's crazy. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, BJ Penn going and living in Brazil. I'm like, that is wild. I was like, man, I would love to do that. I had no idea how I would do that, but that's how I remember Alberto because of that. And he was an American black belt, and it wasn't a common thing back then.
But what a small world, right? What an interesting story of life. Like that all starts with, you getting knocked down and mounted, as a bouncer, and then things pivot in a different direction. You start doing research, and then you start getting into this. Then kettlebells come out along somehow, and then you start teaching and fighting, and now you do this for a living. I mean, do you feel like you are a lucky cat? Do you feel like you've done something remarkable in your life, like you living the dream?
Yeah, man, I love teaching, man. I'm sure I love teaching. I think it's my purpose in life. It's my purpose in life. It's your purpose in life. You're a teacher. That's why you open a gym. It's your purpose. We found our purpose in life, and finding your purpose in life is not something easy to do. Some people choose different paths, they might choose a path where they're just working a 9-to-5 job, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But few people follow their dreams and their passions, like you did and like I did. And like the Japanese, they call the purpose of life, they call it your ikigai. So we found that, and whenever you find that ikigai, it fulfills you as a person. You know what I mean? It makes me feel good. I can honestly say, man, that I never wake up and go, I gotta go fucking teach jiu-jitsu again. I look forward to seeing my students because they're looking forward to seeing me. They want me there, I'm needed there. They like me, and that makes me feel fantastic at it. I'm very blessed to be able to do it for a living, and very blessed to have a lot of students at Legacy and to be at such a big facility. It's a great facility to train. I mean, there's not too many places that have that, in Burbank. It's pretty wild, man. You've been there. It's pretty wild. I mean, it's kind of like a dream gym, and I definitely feel grateful and fulfilling is the one that it makes me feel good that I'm able to do what I love for a living.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like I don't have bad days, and I don't drag getting to the academy and teaching. But at the same time, I often see students who really are unhappy with their life, and that's another reminder how lucky and how fortunate we are to do what we do. Like you said, we found a purpose. We love what we do, And there's so many people who are unhappy out there, and they just do things because they have to. And I often remind them that find what you love and really chase it, because it's worth it. It really is worth it.
Yeah, for sure, definitely, man. People are stuck in that rat race every day, just and we get to do something pretty cool for a living, and people always ask me, how's your day going? I was like, how are you doing? How's your day going? I was like, man, I can't remember the last time I had a bad day. I was like, there are no bad days when you get to teach jiu-jitsu for a living, So
pretty awesome
grateful.
Stuff.
Yeah, man.
Joey, before we start wrapping this up, what we do at the end of every episode, we have question for you from a previous guest. They did not know.
I'll tell you in just a second.
I will tell you in a second, okay? But it is a female black belt, and she had no clue that you will be answering it. So she completely asked the question in blind, okay? Gary's going to ask you the question, and we'll see where this goes.
Yeah, so this is from Alex Barcelona. And she wants to know, if you could change one thing in your past, what would it be?
Oh, my God. Change one thing in my past.
Remember your mouthpiece?
Luckily, I didn't get punched in the mouth. So
how did that happen? I want to know how that happened. How did you not get your teeth knocked out?
Sometimes, man, when you fight like that, you just match up with somebody that you're a lot better with. That's just the way it is, And I I was just a lot better than that guy. He was just kind of like I don't know where he trained or anything like that. So, man, what could I change? I wish I wrestled in high school. I wish I wrestled in high school because now we know how devastating wrestling in itself is, right? And I remember I had my best friend Rich Nago wrestled on the team, and because I had been doing taekwondo for so long, and I was really athletic, and he would always try to wrestle me and take me down, and he would be like, "Man," he's like, "I can't take you down." He's like, "You should wrestle," And now I think about it, like, man, that would have been freaking really cool if I wrestled. And if I did wrestle, maybe that redneck in the bar would have never taken me to the ground.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, but so things wouldn't. I mean, you would have a totally different life right now, because that guy wouldn't have mounted you. Yeah,
exactly. Maybe I would have never discovered jiu-jitsu. No, I think I eventually would have, man. Because of the UFC and everything.
Before we go, you talked a lot about the Machados and the lineage there, and you even touched on music. You wanted to know who Zeppelin was influenced by, right, and what they learned from. Is that something you impress on your students now, that they should learn the lineage and who they are learning from and who their master was?
I definitely bring it up, because at the academy, we have all these old school pictures of all the old school. You seen it, right, Professor Thomas?
Yeah.
We have all the pictures of Carlson Gracie and Master Carlos Sr. and all of them right there. And I'll be like, that was my master's instructor right there. Carlos Gracie right there. I was like, that's pretty cool. And I point them out. And then also to that, we have the four masters on the wall. We have Jigoro Kano, Mitsuru Maeda, and then we have, who is it? Master Carlos and Elio. So I explained to them, I definitely bring it up. I'm like, hey, you know who that is? That's the founder of judo. So I definitely bring it up to them so that they know a little bit of the history as well. So definitely I bring it up to them periodically.
Yeah, I feel like the newer generation of jiu-jitsu, the guys who do get into it, the history, the roots of jiu-jitsu is getting a little bit diluted. A lot of people don't know where jiu-jitsu started. A lot of people don't know what, it's kind of we're getting farther away from the beginnings, and it's those reminders are really important for the students. They should know how this all started. Yeah,
I definitely do. I see all these new young bucks and stuff like that, and they it's frustrating to me because I don't think they're respecting what was before them, man. I was watching this video. I'm not even gonna say who the person is, man, but I'm like, these guys, they're talking oh, you have to bow and call you professor and all that, blah, and it's so stupid. We don't do that at this academy. And I'm just like, man, you guys have no freaking clue, man. Respect, about honor and honoring what came from professor. Well, we're not kissing a professor's ass. I call my master Hajar because he gave me the gift of jiu-jitsu, and he deserves that respect. I still call my master Grandmaster Moreland. I never called him by his first name ever to this day, just out of respect, because that guy is like my martial arts father. There's nothing wrong with that. It came from a different culture. That culture where that's part of the culture, and then that's part of what we're learning in martial arts. We're learning different cultures and stuff like that. And it's rooted in Japan. And back then, over there, they say master. They say, what is master in Japanese anyway?
Sensei,
what I mean?
Sensei.
Yeah, so they're like, I'm gonna say it's like Keenan Cornelius. He's the one that they're American Jiu-Jitsu. We don't say professor. We don't do all that stuff, and we don't grovel at our coaches and stuff like that. And then one of the guys from his academy too is like, oh, we don't do all those stupid warm-ups and crawl around and do hip escapes and stuff like this. I'm like, what are you guys talking about, man? I was like, these guys have been doing jiu-jitsu in Brazil for like 100 years or whatever. That's how, that's just how it's done. You warm up, you do technique, and you do jiu-jitsu, and you roll, and now these guys are like skipping the warm-ups and stuff like that. I was like, you don't understand how important these things are. Warming up is essential to jiu-jitsu. You warm up, drill, and then roll. If you just get right into drilling without warming up, there's a chance that you can get injured. I've actually seen it happen where people like, oh, instead of warming up, we're just going to flow roll. But like, if you don't know, you can't flow roll with a white belt. They don't know how to flow roll. They don't even know jiu-jitsu, right? So I remember one guy blew his knee out flow rolling, and I was just like, why do you guys do that? I was like, you can't flow roll. You can flow roll with a bunch of upper belts maybe, but at the same time, when you're flow rolling, you're transitioning from movement to movement to movement to movement, right? Seamlessly. You have to be warm before you do that shit, man. You have to be warm.
And I will add this. How many times the flow rolling turns into full-on ass sparring?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a meme like that, right? There's a meme out there. Hey, let's flow
I'm
roll.
sure. There's two people. I'm injured right now. There's two people I'll flow roll with here. That's it. Only two, because I know it's going to turn. Even myself, I'll let it turn into something else. I can't control it. So,
Absolutely, definitely. There's
and
a meme
don't worry
there.
about those. Don't worry about those young guys. They'll change with age. Once they start getting a little, getting a little wiser.
Yeah, and that's what I think it is. I think when you're young, when I was young, I didn't really worry about getting injured and stuff like that. I didn't know the importance of warming up and stuff like that. But these new cats, they think they know it all. They get a black belt in 5 years now, and then you don't have to warm up. Just whatever.
Wait till they're 40.
Yeah, exactly. Once they get older, they're gonna be like, hey.
Can we warm up more?
All right, Professor. Before we start wrapping this up, if anybody wants to connect with you, where are you available? Are you on Instagram, websites?
Media.
Where's your stuff?
Instagram's Kettlejitsu, Facebook's at Kettlejitsu, TikTok's Kettlejitsu. Probably the most YouTube's Kettlejitsu.
Kettlejitsu everywhere.
Kettlejitsu everywhere. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks for the conversation, and I'm going to see you next week. Actually, I'm going to be in Burbank next week. Yep.
Nice.
So I'm coming to visit. I'm bringing Edgar with us. You've met him.
Yep.
Yeah,
He's
very
very excited. He wanted me to make sure to say that I'll see you next Monday. So.
Cool, man. Make sure you guys bring some tank tops and some shorts and some sandals, because it's freaking hot right now.
We'll be there. Listen, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for your story. Thanks for sharing this. This is such an amazing life.
I wanted to say that I saw that you guys did I did one with Eddie Cohn.
Oh yeah. We had Eddie.
I've known Eddie for like 15 years. Like I told you the first time I went to Italy to teach for 14 days. I met him at the fitness festival over there, and we hung out the whole time over there. He's a fucking great guy.
I was just messaging with him last week, so I'll make sure I'll drop him a message again and tell him we had you on. So that was fun. Yeah. All right, Professor. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for being a huge contributor to Jiu-Jitsu. I truly appreciate what
Thank you
a
so much. I
kind
appreciate
person
it.
you are.
Good
Gary?
times, man.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. I met you briefly in December, and we were talking about impacting people, just to see how your students approach you. You can tell that you're making a huge impact on them. So thanks for that, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. I know Thomas will talk to you soon. Hopefully I'll see you again before the year is up.
All right, brother. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Let's wrap this up. Later.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.